Welcome to Freedom Window. Today we're going to talk about Iowa. But before we do that, I want to encourage you to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoy looking at the poll internals rather than just the top line numbers reported by biased media organizations trying to influence your opinion. Here at this website, freedomwindow.net, I look at the internals of all the polls before incorporating them into my average. So give me a like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you like it. Okay, so let's take a look at Iowa. First, we'll look at the polls. The pollsters are saying that it is a tie. My average is saying that Trump is up by 3.3. Why the difference? Here we see the charts. My average, their average. Over time, Trump's been ahead for a while there. Pollsters are showing it tightening. One possible reason, there is a bias toward a party that votes early. Democrats are voting earlier in unprecedented numbers. Why that happens? An otherwise unlikely voter in the eyes of a pollster becomes a voter when they vote early. And the more voters you have voting early, the more you have that scenario. And it's going to happen in both parties. So that's one way the polls get skewed close to an election. Another way is the modeling is just bad this cycle. Just bad. Terrible. All right, Emerson College has it tied. I think the internals of that number show that Trump's really up 4. New York Times, I don't use their polls in my average because they exclude some data that you really need to do an honest assessment of their internals. They're showing Biden up 3. No way. That's not right. Insider Advantage, this one surprised me, had Biden up a point. Basically a tie. The internals I thought really showed Trump up by a half point. That is a poll I trust. YouGov showing a tie. Seltzer and Company tie. Fabrizio Hart basically a tie. Trump up 2. Monmouth showing Trump up 2. The pollsters are showing it even because I don't think they really want to take a position in Iowa. They're scared. It's one of those states they missed bad last time. They don't want to miss again. Let me relieve your curiosity. It's not close. Trump's ahead. Let me tell you why I say that. All right, I built a model based on, in part, on the early numbers that we're seeing in the early vote in Iowa, as well as some polling numbers. And here are the most key polling numbers that I use. This is the polling estimates for the percentage of Iowan Democrats and Republicans who are going to vote early and how they're going to do it. So the average of polls show that Democrats will vote 63% early. So 63% of Democrats will vote early. And Republicans, 32% of Republicans will vote early. Key numbers based on an average here. Now, at the end of this video, we're going to look at a couple different scenarios to test this model. For now, let's go on to the model. Okay, what we're seeing, these are the poll numbers that I extracted from the average of polls here to determine how many Republicans we expect to come out early and Democrats and independents. This ratio is the request early ballot ratio. What it is, it determines whether or not the parties are hitting their estimates here. A 1 is a perfect score, which would indicate that exactly 36% of Republicans have requested a ballot early and are likely to vote early. Less than 1 means less than your projected number is showing up. So we look at the requested ballot number right here. Now, one point of confusion for a lot of folks. The media is looking at this number, total voted by mail early. And the Democrats are ahead there. Why are they ahead there? They're ahead there because a lot more of them plan to vote early. As you can see here, 63% of Iowa Democrats plan to vote early. 36% of Iowa Republicans plan to vote early. So if you do the math, they're going to be ahead. The question is, are they disproportionately ahead? Or are they tracking with the polls? So here's what is clear. From the total requested ballots, the Republicans are likely to turn out at a higher rate than Democrats in the early vote. That is why they have the 1.06. When you do the math and you extrapolate and you apply it to the early vote and you apply it to the day of election vote, right here, you can reach a calculation of the ultimate turnout. Now, I'm about to surprise you. Here's the ultimate turnout, this chart right here. Only 11% of the total turnout are supposed to be independents based on this model. Now, that's not going to turn out to be the case. There are going to be more independents than that. But I think we can say definitively right now There will not be as many independents voting in Iowa as there were in 2016. Let's take a look at that. How many voted in 2016? In 2016, based on the exit polls, 35% of the electorate, a majority of the electorate in Iowa, were independents. 34% Republicans, 31% Democrats. Not going to be the case this time. So the narrative that you've been hearing over and over again, if you've been following the news, is we're going to have this massive wave of turnout. Wrong. Turnout's going to be down. Because the massive waves of turnout, contrary to popular opinion, aren't driven so much by the parties. They're driven in part by the parties, but they're driven mainly by the independents. When they come out in large numbers, that's when you get the massive turnout. Not going to happen this time. Right now, based on this model, Republicans should outnumber Democrats in Iowa 5-4, which is certainly enough to overcome any advantage Democrats might have among independents. So based on my model that's based on the polling, Trump's looking very strong in Iowa right now. Now, let's test this theory. The most recent polling, the New York Times, they estimated that 48% of Iowa Democrats would come out and vote early, and that only 21% of Republicans. So let's assume that those numbers are right and my averages were wrong. What happens then? Okay, 21 and 48. We have to go adjust the day of vote as well. 79, 52. What does that do? It makes it worse for the Democrats. So let's try one other approach. Let's say that Republicans should have been polled at about around 40%. That's where they should have been polled. And a few too many Democrats said that they were going to vote early. They're actually going to just decide to wait for Election Day, even though the Democrats are overwhelmingly more afraid of the coronavirus. Let's say 55% of them should have been polled to assume that they were going to vote early. Got to make these adjustments down here. What was the Republican number? 40. Okay, change that to 60. All right, if that's the case, what does it do to the electorate? Okay, here we have a good scenario for the Democrats. They would outnumber Republicans. This looks like a win for Joe Biden. But here's the problem. The assumptions we just made aren't going to happen. There's no way that the percentage turnout of the early vote is going to be this close among Democrats and Republicans. How do we know that? Trump has been discouraging early turnout. The Democrats were the ones that were pushing. So I think we're safe in assuming that the model that I built based on the polling from the pollsters is probably strong enough to indicate a high likelihood of a Trump win in Iowa. Please, if you like the video, like it, subscribe,